Next, we have Phil Behrens joining us from Allianz. Phil is one of our remote presenters, and he's going to be talking through how he and his team built a customized records management program in OnBase. So welcome, Phil. It's great to have you.
All right. Good. There we go. Well, thank you all for having me. It is a pleasure to be here. So my name is Phil Behrens. I'm going to be sharing a little bit with you about our journey to a sustainable document management program by building a customized and homegrown records management program using OnBase as our primary document management system. So, I'll go through who I am, why I'm here, and how we came to having to deal with this problem, and then where we ran into some challenges and how we got through them, and also talk a little bit about the partnership with DataBank, because they really did help us get to where we are today. And then I'll talk a little bit more about where we're going from here. So if you have any questions at any point, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat or the Q&A. And again, thank you very much for having me. So like I said, my name is Phil Behrens. I have been with Allianz for about 5 years now, and I'm talking about our records management journey. Well, my career path has also been a bit of a journey. Started out as an attorney, defense litigator, then moved in-house working on contracts, where I learned a lot about privacy, cybersecurity, and then moved into this records management role, where I've been dealing with information governance, really partnering with our IT, our privacy, our compliance folks, and was responsible for leading this initiative at Allianz Life to build out a records management program. So I will move on to our next little bit here. So this is where we were in about 2018. The company was really dealing with a lot of emerging privacy regulations, both domestically and internationally. In 2018, we had a history of starting and stopping records management initiatives. So, when I came into the privacy office in ethics and compliance, they, pointed me to some old documentation of, from 10, 15 years ago, where someone had started something, but it never really took hold because, who wants to clean out their closets? Who wants to organize stuff that, is outside of their day job? Well, GDPR forced our hand. At that point, our parent company in Munich said, all right, all of our companies need to have a records management program in place. We need to be getting rid of things. We need to be ready for GDPR so that we can say that we're handling data, information, records appropriately. And so with that, then we were, they forced our hand. We had to fund a project to roll out a records management program. But the question was, how do we do that? Well, this was what we used to train some of our users. It was, why are we doing this? And it was really, we've been keeping things forever, and there are some benefits to it. Certainly over time, there had been benefits around, well, there was this one time I needed to find this document and I went back 20 years and found it. Well, that's great. But then if you think about the flip side of that, every litigation you're in, the discovery portion of it, well, the more you have, the more can be discovered. So it's really this double-edged sword. And then in relation to these emerging regulations, specifically around personal information, privacy, how long you're keeping this data, well, keeping everything forever is not sustainable. Also, originally at the time, cost of storage was seen as a factor. Obviously, cost of storage is really not as much of an issue. We can talk about cloud stuff too, but cost of storage isn't really the driving factor here. It is more around regulatory compliance and really efficiency, organizational efficiency, because that's what information management comes down to is, do you know where your stuff is? Do you know what you're doing with it? And do you know that you're getting rid of it when you're done with it? So the goals of this funded project that did last from 2018 just up until last year, so for 4 years, we needed to figure out who our information owners were. We needed to figure out what our relevant documents, our records were. We needed to have governance, oversight, really a program. We needed to be deleting things we didn't need, both in our shared network locations, our NAS, and in email. We had to get retention applied to relevant IT systems, and we had to implement some offsite storage governance, because at the time we had about 60,000 boxes stored at various offsite storage vendors, both in the Twin Cities and around the country. So that needed to get under control as well. And then we also were in the process, and we still are, I will just be candid about that, of transitioning to Microsoft 365, which, we needed to make sure that we were putting our retention in place for that and leveraging the capabilities in M365 for records and information management. So a lot of goals, huge scope. Again, took 4 years to just get to the foundational place where we are now. But I know, we're well, here, we'll talk about, the progress that we had made at the time and some challenges we had. So the scope, how do you get everyone in your company to suddenly start caring about managing their records? Well, you have to do it one step at a time, bite-sized pieces. We often use the analogy, which I don't love, but how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. But please don't eat elephants. Not okay. But the point is, you can't. It's really easy to get overwhelmed. It's really easy to look out there and see that there's so much stuff. There's so many files. How are you even supposed to start making heads or tails of it? Well, so I'll get to that in a little bit about how we really use OnBase to help us sort of narrow that scope and help people think more logically about it. And you can see the second issue we have up here was lack of taxonomy direction. So the original project team that started this, the critical error they made was they started with legal. Never start a project with legal. You're not going to get anywhere. So they were quickly, inundated with how you, just saw, great comment in the chat, with all the details of how is this going to work, not so much the what do we need to do. And so they tried in OnBase, they tried using the file systems, but they were letting people have too much freedom to customize. People were, if you ask someone how they would organize a room, you're going to get as many answers as you ask people, or the number of people you ask. And so trying to go to each individual person and saying, how would you create your taxonomy? It didn't work. They quickly got behind and then needed to refocus. So when we came in to this project, we said, all right, let's standardize this. Let's do a standard taxonomy for the organization and let there be variations based on business needs, but at least they have something to react to. So we started, we decided to use document type groups for business areas, and types for the different, groups for departments, types for different areas within those departments, different business areas, and then multiple document types depending on, and I'll get to the details of this in a moment, but depending on their needs for how many types of records and the different retention periods they had. And I'll just say at the front, we managed retention through keyword and workflows. But I will get into more detail on that in a moment. So the standardized taxonomy was what got us over that hump of too many cooks, too much diffused responsibility, no one would make a decision. That was the next thing, the ownership. Who owns this? Well, technically, everyone who creates a record is that record's owner. Well, again, too many cooks. How are you going to make any progress if everyone is doing their own thing? We came up with a model where we have records custodians for each business area. They're trained individuals who understand OnBase, understand how to archive, understand their areas, Of course, Microsoft 365 wants to update right now. I'm going to postpone that. It's a fun journey we're on, but the custodian model has allowed us to make progress because we have basically extensions of our records management program in each business area. Another roadblock we had was the legal side of it. How do you manage legal holds? How do you manage deletion in such a way that it is defensible? How do you avoid spoliation issues in litigation? Saying, well, you just started deleting this and you're not paying attention to what the holds are. You need to really get legal on board and have something that you can point to, a technology that says, no, we reviewed this. This is how we retain them. This is when they get deleted, so that you can say, if you don't have something, this was deleted for our retention schedule. And so that is where our retention workflows in OnBase are key. And another issue, we had some issues with vendor performance, not DataBank. DataBank was great and really helped us get our taxonomy put together. This was our vendor for a scanning tool that we use for our network drives, and it was a sub-vendor. So anyway, had to manage that relationship as well. A records management program, there are a lot of parts at any given time. So what we did, we were in version 18, so we were behind. I mean, OnBase, we've had at Allianz since the early 2000s. I mean, we've been with OnBase for a long time, and it's very customized. But you can also imagine in that time, we have had a lot of, customizations, a lot of different use cases that have been started, stopped, abandoned. So our OnBase is, she's been going for a while, but she's doing great, and we've gotten it upgraded more. But there's a lot of history there, and so very homegrown, very customized. So what we did was, using our retention schedule, we got our record codes that we defined in OnBase as keywords. So every document type we created in our document management space has a retention code keyword, and so we worked with all the business areas, determined what those should be as we created their taxonomies, got those in place, and then behind the scenes, we're developing the workflows for those retention periods. And the challenge too was, retention, it's not just when you put a document into OnBase, that's when retention starts. In some instances it is, but other times there are triggers. And so how do you manage those? And that was a very large challenge we were facing over, the course of project. And we worked with our partners at DataBank on different approaches, different types of workflows. Ultimately, we did come up with just triggering keywords. Those retention types that had a trigger, say case, say case closed, or once a case is closed, retention begins. We would create a keyword for that would be case closed, yes, no, and that then is tied to our retention. And next, let's see. So you can see what our standard document types that we created there. But and so every area in the company has those, and then there are many variations thereof based on their individual needs. So next up, we also had some standard fields, standard keywords for everything. So not just, so before it was the standard doc types for your taxonomy, these are standard keywords, so that we are able to, just every document must have, a name, a description. Well, actually description, we have optional, but always information classification and retention code. The mail ones, those only populate if you are archiving something from Outlook, if you're archiving email. And we worked with OnBase plugins. So we have those in Outlook. We have them in all of our Office programs. We're working on updating them for M365 right now, but basically all of the metadata from emails would be populated automatically. And then we'll start. Yep. And then I really spoke to why we did a records custodian model. There's also a cost component, as you are all aware. OnBase licenses, not cheap. And so having everybody be on this, you have an individual named user license, was not appealing to executives of the company, et cetera, because we've got about 2,500 employees. So what we did, the records custodian model helped with that, and then we also purchased a pool of concurrent licenses, and that also helped us manage our access, because really only the records custodian should be the ones who are archiving or potentially modifying keywords if they, made a mistake, or re-indexing. But everyone else does need the ability to, pull a copy of a record if they need it. I mean, the reason we have these is so people can continue to work with them, and then that they're automatically deleted at the end of their retention period. Well, the concurrent licenses then allow the rest of the team, the rest of the company to, pull from that pool, come in, do what they need, and then log out. And that is working very well for us right now. Okay, I need to go into more detail on these ones. Into the technical, the nuances. So here you can see how we added retention to each document type. So this is the configuration behind the scenes, and based, the workflow that we use to set up our retention. And so we have a processor, and I should have given a little disclaimer. Originally, I was going to be presenting with my IT senior manager, who is the owner for OnBase. I'm just the business solutions owner for OnBase, so I have enough knowledge to be dangerous, but I'm not going to be able to get super into the technical weeds of how everything was done here. But we've got our screenshots, you can see, and if people have questions, I can do my very best to answer them. Oh, and it's still showing my name as Phil Behrens. That's fun. Okay. Well, anyway, you can call me Phil. Our purge messaging. So this helps us make sure that we are also getting our certificates of deletion, because you can't just wholesale delete records without some evidence of the due diligence behind them. And so we do, you can see from the configuration here what we set up so that we can prove that we deleted what we were supposed to delete. And so that is working extremely well. On the back end, in case people are curious how we manage our holds in OnBase, initially it was just freeze all purge processors until the hold is lifted or until we can scope out areas. Doesn't work very well. It's the strokes are too broad. We use our scanning tool, though, now on the network locations where the OnBase files sit. We can scan for our legal hold key and then get our list of those that are not eligible for their life cycle. It's a combination. That's what we're homegrown solution here. So let's see. Oops, it moved off of there we go. And then our next one, so our life cycle, like I said, you can see the details here. It's our initial sort and the retention code queues, and based on their number of years and keyword triggers, all the things I've spoken through. This talks about frequency once a day, and it'll remove them from the workflow and then put them into the purge processor. And yeah, we've made a lot of progress. It did take a lot of time and a lot of development. And we've also gone through an OnBase upgrade through the time, where, just as a note, originally we did not have indefinite retention, so we just did document date plus 100 years. Well, now there is indefinite, so we are updating that through our newer version. And let's see, so yep, I talked about the certificate of deletion. And then this, I'm not going to read through all of this, but this is just for reference. You'll be able to see the slides after this, what we went through each year of the project. This is when I came in. I came in 2020, in February of 2020. So it was a fun start. I had to do all of this remotely during the pandemic, but talking through all the steps that we went through to roll this program, and what we accomplished year over year. So again, we measured, how much we trained our individuals, how much we deployed our taxonomies, what we're quarantining and network. We're measuring how much we're deleting. Again, we're an insurance company, so pretty risk averse. So we had to do a very conservative process for how we rolled this out. But it's been a long journey, but it's been a good one. And so you can just see at the beginning it was really about training, awareness, huge communication plan. And then it was about routine repetition and then troubleshooting some of the bugs that came through, normally as to come through a process like this. And then by the end of the project, we were 100% compliant with our parent company's requirements, rated at the top of all of our other companies, along with 4 other ones. And we'd say OEs, those are operating entities up there. We had done book deletion. We were continuing to clean up our network drives, cleaning up offsite. We've identified over half of the 54,000 boxes offsite, and quarantined terabytes and terabytes of data, and then soon to be deleted. And OnBase is humming along and working as expected, as needed. And then we're also really working through our M365 environment. This one I just put in for reference because this is all that went into the program. This is what our program looks like now. And there's a lot, I'm not going to read through it, but we've got those 7 pillars of, the technical side, our governance and oversight, our business support, because we have to keep those records custodians trained and make sure that when someone leaves the company, that area still has support. We're doing our offsite storage, we're doing our reporting. We've of course got to continue to stay close with OnBase and make sure everything is working as we need it to. And then our overall information governance strategy, which is about the bigger picture of records management as it fits into information security, data and analytics, data privacy, et cetera. So this is where we are now and continuing to mature. And then our future state. We are really looking, of course, to continue to mature the program and want to continue to leverage OnBase upgrades for advanced reporting, because our areas want to know, how much do we have out there? How much is eligible for deletion? What's next? And so we're really excited about the new capabilities with OnBase and our cloud migration, which is coming in the next few years, making sure that we keep up with everything and the capabilities, because there's so much OnBase can do. You barely scratch the surface of. And so one more additional point on here is the, the GRASS solution. So this is with Policy Center, Iron Mountain, one of our offsite storage vendors. They have a legislative tracking pension schedule. And you can get this link, which is Governance Rules as a Service, where basically if you update in the Policy Center tool, it will update in OnBase your retention codes, or your retention periods. So that way it's just automating and making things a little smarter and a little less manual. And then of course, we're working with M365 and integration and managing the cloud migration as well. Long journey, really, but an excellent one. I have learned so much, and that's that's the next one. But I will pause now and see, do people have any questions for me? Thank you all for your time.
Hi, Phil. Thank you so much. This is Claire. I'm going to check and see the questions that we have coming in from the chat. Looks like we have a round of applause for your presentation, so great job. Let's take a look at our Q&A. That is the wrong screen to be looking at. Okay, so we do have just a couple of questions. Okay, so first one, I'm sure there are people who can relate to this, but I'm buried in paper, but I have no budget for a big scanning project. What's a good way, or a big records management project? What's a good way for me to get started on a smaller scale to what you've been working with?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. I would say the best way to get started is to, well, if you're looking for ways to convince leadership that this is something worth spending money on, there's absolutely a lot of data on how much it costs to, say, review something for litigation. If you don't have a handle on your information, the cost is, it's millions of dollars. But in terms of what you can do locally, understanding what your records are. So that's the first step, understanding what do we need to keep, and knowing the legal basis behind it, your retention periods, is really important. But even before that, knowing what are our company records? What are the things that we need to keep for more than, we say 3 years. 3 years is our cutoff for non-record content when we start deleting. So understanding your area's records and then adopting a mentality of letting go of the other things or even cleaning out, because what we've heard from our business areas who are doing this cleanup and letting us do our cleanup is that they are finding things so much faster. They're not doing an archaeological dig through folders, of people just putting folders within folders. And so they're finding more efficiencies through just this regular cleanup. And then just high level, I would say, yeah, just get started. Start getting rid of the stuff you don't need.
That's great. Thank you, Phil. Do we have any questions from our audience here in Lincoln? No? Okay. I am seeing one other question that we didn't get to in the chat. What advice would you give to someone who's starting out in OnBase?
Oops, I lost the end of the question there. Could you say it again?
Advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in OnBase?
Ooh, I would say leverage the resources that Highland has for just OnBase 101, base understanding of what it does, because there's so much out there. But the free training resources from Highland, I think, is a great place to start.
All right. Any other questions from the group? Yes, Jen. Here, I'll bring the mic over to you.
So I just wanted to reiterate what Phil just said. As a user who just put in our workflow, that's my one wish I would have done, was spend more time on Highland University going through those training, online training tools. I didn't know what I didn't know until it was a little bit too late. So if you're just getting started, go learn, ask questions. I think that's the best.
Join the communities, the groups that have examples of what they've done.
And also join the OnBase Camp user group coming to you this summer. Okay, I think we're wrapped up on questions. Phil, thank you. Great job today. All right.
Thank you all.